I remember at one point, it felt like I could feel my joints like stretching and expanding. And I felt like in my body, I felt like a crack, 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 like around my hips. I had to like breathe. I think it was like I was breathing in and relaxing the best I could while being stretched to my full capacity. I pushed one more time and he flew out. And I was like, whoa.
I had my children on the floor. I was on my favourite blanket that my grandmother gave me on the floor like a cat.
And I realised in that moment the potential of what our bodies can really do as women.
Like I could feel his head, I could do my own internal, like, yeah, his head, I could feel it.
I was in tears, I was just in tears and overwhelmed with gratitude.
Hi and welcome to the Natural Birth Podcast, the podcast that is bringing embodied birth wisdom from women from all over the world sharing their natural birth stories. Don't forget to subscribe and download so that you can always have access to these empowering and positive natural birth stories. Hi Simone and welcome to the Natural Birth Podcast. How are you?
I am doing well today. It is early, and to be honest, I don't usually wake up this early. I think because of the time difference, but it was actually really refreshing because at first last night I was like, oh goodness, and then I woke up this morning. I was like, I have time to meditate, and I have time for me, and to eat breakfast, and to get all dressed up in like a non-pressured, rushed way. So it was actually really grounding. And I was like, I might keep doing this. So it worked out well.
I love that for you. Well, you feel very kind of refreshed and present. It doesn't feel like you just woke up and it's 5 a.m. where you're at. And
Mhm.
yes, of course, being in Europe, the time differences with women from all over the world. I do have a bit of later time slots too, but they were probably already taken. I'm quite booked out far in advance. But I love that so much that you prioritize coming up early to share your story with us.
Of
And
course.
yeah, let's not dive on into your birth story. So wherever you want to take us back to, if you want to share anything from conception, pregnancy that you feel is, relevant to the story, something that can give women some insight into your journey, wherever you want to start.
Yeah, I am so excited to share and to be here, and I want to thank you for your podcast and for doing what you do, because it was stories like this that helped me. I feel like truly have the birth that I had, rather than the fear-based one that so many women have, unfortunately. But to start off, I had a phenomenal birth. I would 10 out of 10 recommend. Would do it again. Plan on doing it again. And I guess I'll start with my conception journey, which was very unexpected. And I know some people call it like, oh, it was an accident. I don't see that at all. The way I see it as it wasn't a mistake. It was very much so meant to be, and it was all divine timing. And I think that was a part of one of the lessons that conception and birth had for me, and that I truly do believe motherhood is a portal back into your power, and it is a part of your purpose and your mission. And I do believe that it is meant to serve every woman in different ways, and every person, regardless of how they identify. But in my case, that was a part of the lesson, and that I didn't have to and wasn't meant to see everything. I wasn't fully meant to think that I had to be super prepared. It was very raw and real and humbling and grounding at the same note. So I always wanted to be a mom. I always wanted to be a younger mom. When I had my son, I was 25 years old. I did not have any friends who also had children who were pregnant. Everybody around me is waiting until their 30s. So it was kind of an isolating journey for me. So a lot of the connection and the support that I had, aside from like my close friends and family, was through connecting with other women who could understand my story, who were going through similar things, that shared my values. Um, and when I was when I did get pregnant, I've always been one of those people who had a connection to my kids, and I felt really crazy when I was younger, before the term spirit baby was a thing. It was not spoken about here, at least, and so I would look to my friends in high school and I'd be like, "Do you ever feel like you have a connection to your kids and like you know them and you love them before they're even here?" And I would get looks like I had like 5 heads, and they'd be like, "Absolutely not." And I was just like, "Oh, okay." In the summer leading up to my conception, I I was thinking about my kids a lot. I wasn't planning on having my kids at all at that point. I was thinking like, maybe 2, 3 years. And yet they kept coming through. One in particular kept coming through, and I just kept thinking about them and thinking about them and where would I live and what would I do and what did I want to share with them. And it was very strange. It was like when I would take pictures of my partner and I together, it was like I was looking through the eyes of a child. And I would like have a thought pop into my mind that said, "Those are my parents. Those are my parents." And that was the first time that ever happened to me. And I was like, interesting. Like, didn't really think much of it because I wasn't planning on consciously conceiving at that point. And it all makes sense now. uh, just being drawn towards children. I actually, I'm a coach, a life coach, but I also wanted to do other work while I was building my business. And so I actually ended up working at a daycare because I wanted to surround myself with children and like kid energy. And I just got pregnant very, very unexpectedly with an eclipse randomly. But anyway, um, when I found out I was pregnant, I missed my period, and I assumed, because I usually bled with the full moon and such at that time, which sounds like random to some people, but that was just my cycle, that it was late because with previous eclipses, it came about like a week late too. And so I was like, oh, whatever. Didn't really think much of it, didn't think I was pregnant. And then it was a little bit longer than that previous experience. And I was like, again, didn't actually think much of it. Um, and then I remember meditating in my car, and I essentially surrendered. And I told Spirit, I was like, okay, um, whatever, I don't know what's happening. And I do believe that I'm going to get my period, but you know what? Like, I trust that you have a plan higher for me and that you have a vision greater than my own. And in that moment, I felt this strong wave of peace come over me. And it was very calm. It was probably about 10 days after I usually would have, maybe 8 days after I usually would have gotten my period. I did have some spotting at the time, which I thought was my period coming, and it did not come. And uh, when that wave came, it was gone. Again, strong wave of peace. And I got my period that night, or so I thought. And I was supposed to have like big dark red blood. And so I assumed I was supposed to have my annual gynecology appointment the day after. And I was like, I should call and see if they still want to see me. Little side note, I wasn't originally meant to have my appointment then. It was December 1st. And I was scheduled for October 25th, but I started a new job and I forgot about it. And so they moved it to December 1st, which happens to be my grandmother's birthday. And when I called to see if they wanted to move it, they're just like, no, come in. And I was like, okay. And then the next day, I'm getting into my car and I'm just like, wouldn't it be crazy if somehow this isn't actually my period and I find out I'm pregnant? And I just laughed it off because, like, your intuition speaks randomly. And I don't think you're always consciously ready to accept the truth that your spirit knows. And so I get there, and my gynecologist, well, actually, I get there, I'm lying down. I didn't even realize I took a pregnancy test. I forgot that when you pee, they're not just checking for infections or UTIs, they're also checking for pregnancy. And so I'm lying there looking up at the sky, or the ceiling in the room, and out of nowhere, I get that same really strong wave of peace that I've never had before, except that other time, the day before. And this time, it says, everything is going to be okay. And I was like, okay, that's really weird and random. Like, of course it's gonna be okay. I have my period. Like, it's not that deep. And then my gynecologist walks in. She's making small talk. She's like, "How are you doing? How's life?" And I'm like, "Everything's great. It's awesome. I converted a van, or like part halfway through my van build, because we like to travel." Side note, we did add a third seat, and he travels with us when we go on our trips. But yeah, she was like, "Oh, that's amazing." She's like, "I should let you know that your pregnancy test came back positive." And in that moment, like, I was not expecting to hear that at all. I didn't even know I took a pregnancy test. And just shock, like shock, shock, shock. I hyperventilated for the first time in my life. Because in that moment, you hear that your life is about to change, like, no matter what. And so hyperventilated, really, really shocked, shaking, full body. She actually had to guide me back to breathing normally multiple times, because I was just like not fully expecting that. So, as much of a blessing as my conception and birth and my son is, like, I'm so grateful, wouldn't change anything. That was somewhat traumatic because I was alone and not expecting that. So that happened. And she was like, sometimes we get false positives. And I was just like, what are the chances that it's a false positive? And I knew. I was like, it's not a false positive. And she was like, we got one today. She said that we could do a blood test to see if um, if it was valid, and if I was actually pregnant. I'd get the results in 24 hours. And I could not wait 24 hours after hearing that news for the first time in my life. And so she said that we could do one of the internal ultrasounds, because it would have been so early. And she was actually so, I think, also shocked by my reaction and the experience. She actually walked into a wall when setting up the room for me to get my ultrasound. And fast forward, I'm on the bed, like looking at the screen where we're doing an ultrasound, and I see this little bean. I like to call it a bean on the screen. And I ask her, I'm just like, "Is that a baby?" And she goes, "That is a fetus. And it looks to be about 7 weeks and 3 days old." And I was like, okay. And that was just huge. And God bless my gynecologist. She was really kind and compassionate and not pushy at all. She was like, "Well, like, we have options." And I think my reaction was so strong, because I knew that, if even beforehand, that if I got pregnant, I wasn't wanna I didn't want to get rid of my child. And so I told my partner, who was also not expecting that, and I kept my first picture of my baby, and he was really supportive too. I was just like, "Whatever you want to do." And so I said, "I want to keep it." And fast forward, we kept my baby. And so that was my conception. Very unexpected, very stressful, just because of the unexpected element at that point. And also somewhat lonely of an experience, because, again, like, I didn't know many other pregnant women around me that I was close to. I didn't really have anybody who shared my values in motherhood. I tend to lean more on the holistic and crunchy side, and a lot of them were like, "Just get an epidural, birth is awful, yada yada." And I was like, I don't want to believe that. And I don't believe that's how it's supposed to be. And so I had to turn towards other resources. Teresa Palmer, the Days podcast, this podcast, and Ina May Gaskin. Her work also helps. I read her, or listened to the audiobook of, I forgot what it's called, something about childbirth. But either way, it's just like filled with positive stories of women giving birth naturally. I also think it helps that my mom was also pretty crunchy, and so I was born in my room, and she gave birth naturally as well, unmedicated birth, with a midwife present. So she helped, and she was like, "Birth is easy." She was like, "I slept through my labor," and I did not sleep through my labor. That was not my experience. My mom has a pretty a different tolerance for certain sensations, but she also had a pretty positive natural birth, which was a lovely close to home experience to be shared with me, and she breastfed and everything. And so when it came to my actual birth, I feel like there are two parts to this, and that the first, I like some people call it a false labor. I like to see it as a partial labor. I had contractions for, I believe, 8 hours, which like they, I forgot how long they were, but I had contractions for about 8 hours, 5 days prior to my birth, my actual birth. And I thought I was gonna have my baby, and I was really excited. And I was just like, it's happening. And then it stopped, and I was really upset. And I didn't want to talk to anybody. And everybody was checking on me, which I really appreciated, but at the same time, I just needed space to process, and I didn't want to really connect too much.
Can
I
you
was just so.
share, like,
Mhm.
when was this in your gestation and how was that experience? And what do you now see? Like, what was your body or your baby or your spirit doing during that 8 hours? I'd love to hear your insights now of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe I was 30. I actually had him at 39 weeks on the dot. So I was 38 weeks, or close to 39 weeks. I was full term, which is why I was expecting, or like, oh, like this is it. Another side note, that day happened to be my grandfather's birthday, so I found out about conception on my grandmother's birthday and went into my first labor on my grandfather's birthday. And during those 8 hours, I was really excited. I was dancing, I was moving with the contractions and just like surrendering and making space. But I also think that partial labor had a lesson for me as well, which is why it wasn't full. And that I was looking around me because I wasn't quite expecting, or maybe it's not so that I wasn't expecting it because I was almost 39 weeks. But I was in this very heady mental space where I was just like, I want to prepare this, I want to get this done, I want to, because I also was growing my business at the time, and I still am. But I was just like, I want to have this content batched, I want to reach out to these people, I want to have this email sequence done. It was very like prep oriented, and there was so many tasks that I definitely could have delegated more efficiently during my pregnancy. It was not a calm and relaxed and really receptive pregnancy. It was a very fiery go, 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 because the way I saw it when I found out I was pregnant with the unexpected manner was, I don't want to waste any more time with my goals. So, contrary to the, I guess, kind of societal notion here, it's not that I felt like I needed to put my dreams on the side. It was like I need to move even faster, because I want to not only bring a child in and let them see what it means to fully believe in and go for your dreams, and to dreams aside from motherhood, because obviously he is a part of my dream. And it was really important for me to know that he didn't take away from that, but that he actually added to the fullness of my life. And so I was very busy during my pregnancy, both with jobs and building my business and all of the work that went into that, and being in business masterminds and such. So it was very active. But leading into that partial labor, I was still in that headspace, and I didn't do the other things that were important for welcoming in a baby, of like setting up the room and making sure everything was like open, and having the car seat ready, and having the delivery bag, or the like laboring bag prepped. So like when I went into labor, which was, I think, in the middle of the night, it was like 1 a.m. Um, I told my partner, and he was like, "What?" And so he's like scrambling around the house trying to get everything together, like reading the manual about how to set up this like the car seat, trying to get the diaper bag packed. And I think subconsciously I'm watching all this, and I just kept thinking to myself, "We're not ready. We're not ready. We're not ready." And I think that mindset is exactly what stopped the labor, and me literally telling myself in my body, I'm not ready, subconsciously on repeat. Um, and I think that is one of the biggest lessons that my conception and my birth had, is that it wasn't actually that I'm not ready, because I truly believe in my heart of hearts, not just for me, the opportunity would not have been there, and he would not have come in if I wasn't spiritually ready to receive this child. And yet my mind was telling me something different. And I don't think that just applies to motherhood. I think motherhood very much so parallels our spiritual evolution and our manifestation journey. And that's part of what I teach in my programs. In that I do believe that if you're telling yourself you're not ready in that regard, it's also likely that you're telling yourself you're not ready to receive other manifestations and births in your life. And so when I was telling myself I wasn't ready for my child, I was also telling myself I'm not ready for this client, or I'm not ready for this growth, or I'm not ready for this experience because of bop, bop, bop. And so it was that mirror where just like me telling myself I'm not ready is exactly what's blocking and not allowing this child to come in and this manifestation as well. And so when I realized that, it stopped in the morning, like I fell asleep and the contractions went away, and I was really sad about it. And I was like, well, I don't understand. I think I truly, I felt like I felt like it was going to happen, and I thought it should happen. And I also like astrology, and I was like, this astrology is nice. And so I was like, okay. But anyway, a couple days later, I woke up in the morning. I was still upset and moping, and I was like, why isn't my baby here? Like I was upset, and I was just like, I feel like my baby should be here. And yet again, I was listening to like birthing podcasts and such. I was listening to stories to prepare myself for my child and prepare myself for life. And really this like kind of perfectionist like type of approach to parenting and motherhood and birth. And I'm not negating that. I do think prep, especially when it comes to expanding what you believe is possible for you in birth, like listening to podcasts like this, listening to audiobooks, hearing other women's empowering birth stories, I really do think it makes such a difference. So I'm not trying to negate prep or deny the power of prep. But I do think there is a certain point where it's not really aligned action as much, or to empower it could be like more of a fear-based space and a lack of trust and from a contracted space. And
Yeah.
I think that's like, yeah, what was happening for me.
Mm.
And so I remember looking in the mirror the morning that I went into labor, and I I thought to myself, I was just like, I feel like my baby is ready. I feel like this child is ready. And I feel like the universe is ready. I was like, I feel like he's done. And I feel like they're actually waiting on me. And that was the thing. I looked at myself in the mirror, and I was just like, what am I waiting for? And I realized I was like, I'm ready. And so there was the shift where it was from I'm not ready, despite everything. Like, I'm not even gonna lie, all of the email sequences, everything that I could have done or had further along, that was still there. I did not finish all of that, and I was still ready. It didn't have to be there. Like the multi-million dollar business was not there. This like type of experience, the band build actually did get finished. I pushed really hard for that. Was there, but not everything was perfect. And I always thought that I had to have everything together, that I had to have this metric, that I had to have this goal, that I had to have this mindset, that I had to have this trauma healed, that I had to be this perfect version of myself, this perfect person to be worthy and ready to be a mom. And that's not true. And that's one of the biggest lies that I was carrying at this time, that I feel like so many women carry. That isn't true. You're ready. Like you're ready. Like you just are. And I think when you step into that space of realizing that readiness, and like different, it had to come to me differently. I think that's why my birth came unexpectedly as a shock, because I had to realize I was ready before I was, because I was so stuck in that mindset and that belief of not being ready, of not being worthy, of not being prepared. Um, I feel like I had to be someone else or someone more to be who I wanted to be, and to receive what I wanted to receive, and to live how I wanted to live. And my birth and my pregnancy and conception story ripped all of that from me. And I'm really grateful for that, despite how like shocking it came in. It was like I needed all of that. That was all a part of my medicine. And so I do believe that like our conception journey, as random or unexpected or challenging, especially if it's like been up and down, or maybe it's been a long time, all of it has medicine for us, that can be hard to see or receive in the moment. But looking back, it's just like all very clear. And I'm like, oh, like this makes a lot of sense. And so that morning I spoke to my baby, like when I realized, I was like, you know what? I'm ready. I'm done waiting. I've been waiting my entire life, not just for this baby, but for everything, thinking that I need to do or be something else. I'm like, I'm ready for this shift. I'm ready for this next version of me. And I looked down and I put my hand on my like belly or uterus technically. And I was like, "Hey, I think you're ready. And if you are," and I was like, "I think you've been waiting for me and I'm sorry about that." And I was like, "If you are ready, I'm going to do my best to bring you in within the next 24 hours. And if you are ready, I ask that like you let me know by being born." Um, and so that was that. And here comes like the next sequence of it. The first time I went into labor, to be very blunt, I did have those contractions after having sex with my partner, and I didn't realize that that would happen at that time. Um, and so, and the same thing, like I started to have like little contractions a couple weeks beforehand at the baby shower. And so I think subconsciously I had a feeling that I was just like, what put this baby in is also the thing to get this baby out. And if I allow this to happen energetically and physically, I'm going to have this baby. And so I was kind of like avoiding sex, I think, towards the end as well, because I was like, I'm not ready again. And that morning, as I talked to my son, I was just like, all right, like, we're doing this. If you're ready, I'm ready. Like, let's go. And I talked to my partner and I was just like, we're having sex. And he was just like, what? I don't want to do that. And I was just like, what, why? And he was just like, because last time you went into labor. And he was just like, I don't want all that drama. He was just like, we almost called out. He was like, I called out of work. I thought the baby was going to come, everything. And he was like, I don't want all of that drama. It sounds like a lot of drama right now. And I was just like, well, I do. And I think we should have sex because I want our baby here. And he looked at me and he was just like, well, I want to play video games. And I was just like, well, all right. And I was just like, but I still want it to happen. He was just like, I'm going to play one more round and then, okay. And I was like, all right, let's go. And so it took a little bit of negotiating. But again, it's just like when you're ready and when you know it's for you, like you make it happen. And so it was happening. Aside from having sex, which after I almost didn't again because again I got in the headspace. My partner just or was about to finish video games. I walked into the room and I was just like, you know what? Maybe I'm pushing things. The baby's gonna come on their own time. Um, I don't think we should do this after all. And the second I said that, my heart dropped. Like I felt this feeling in my body of just like sadness and like contraction. And I was like, oh, like that wasn't fully in alignment. That was fear speaking. And so I told my partner, never mind, had sex. Fast forward, I also looked online. I was just like, are there any exercises or stretches I could do to prepare my baby if it is ready? And so I did happen to find this random YouTube video called the Mile Circuit. I did the exercises and uh, it did work. Like it worked. I want to say I was having the contractions after I had sex, so I was already having them, but it didn't progress anything that much in the moment. I also invested in a birth course that helped me. And it wasn't, I was watching those videos hours into my labor where I was just like keeping moving. I was on a birthing ball and just like relaxing my body after I did the mile circuit after I had sex. And this time it was about the mindset of releasing fear and like kind of not hypnosis, but like releasing fear around birth, releasing fear around like the pain of birth, even though I already did a lot of like expanding by listening to stories and podcasts up until that point. But that also really helped me too. And it was like basically envisioning your birth going how you want and like feeling good and seeing yourself like having that birth experience that you're hoping for. And so I did that for I want to say an hour. And then at this point it's nighttime. It's like 7, 8 p.m. I started having contractions around 4 p.m. And they weren't really doing too much. It wasn't like I was in active labor. It was very early. the contractions, I don't remember how far they were apart. I think it was normal and consistent. And then towards the end of like later into the night around 10 p.m., it was just like strange. It was starting to feel like it was dwindling down again, like the first time with my partial labor. And again, I was getting upset. I was just like, I don't know what's happening. I didn't tell, that's another thing. I didn't tell my partner this time that I was having contractions. The first time I did, the second time I didn't because I didn't want that mental pressure. I didn't want everybody checking in on me. I just wanted to be in my space. And so I didn't say anything. I was going through like those first 4 or 5 hours by myself in my like little meditation visualization zone, did the mile circuit, work, stretching on the birthing ball and such are moving. And then I told my partner because he was like, "You look upset and you look strange, like or like strange." He was like, "What's going on?" And I was like, "Okay, I don't want to tell you because like you got stressed last time, and like you said it was going to be a bunch of drama, and I know we're both supposed to work tomorrow." But I was like, "I've been having contractions for the past like 5 to 6 hours, and it doesn't seem like it's progressing that much, and like I don't know what's happening anymore." And so I was upset, but again, I just like surrendered and I was like, whatever, like the baby's gonna come when the baby's meant to come. I went to the bathroom. I was gonna drop a bath because I think one of the midwives at my birthing center said that if it was real contractions, like it would, the bath would help either accelerate or the contractions would stay consistent. And if it was false, they would go away. And so I think at that point I surrendered and I was just like let's just see what's happening. And before I even got into the bath, I saw my mucus membrane like in the toilet, I think.
Mucus plug,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, my mucus plug in the toilet. And I was like, oh, like that's new. Like I hadn't seen that before. And so I was excited and I was like, I think this is real. And I told him and I called the midwife and she was like, like we don't always validate that. The birthing center that I was at, like they're not open during the weekend. It was a weekend when I went into yeah, they have an on-call midwife, but they're not there. So they want you to be at least 5 centimeters before they allow you to stay at the center and to have adequate, I guess, reason to come in. And so I told them, and they're just like, oh, like that doesn't always mean that they're coming like soon or within the next like couple of hours. Sometimes it happens earlier for some women. And so they're just like, we really look for your water to break for you to come in and like the contractions. That's what they told me. They're just like, we're waiting.
Well, okay, I need to stop you here because that's a very strange requirement because your waters might not even break until the
Break.
baby's out. Like you can actually birth your baby in intact membranes with the waters intact. So that's a strange thing to say. Now,
Yeah.
like the mucus plug can, yeah, that you can lose your mucus plug like a week or two before you go into labor. It can regrow and come back. Obviously now, like with you having contractions, it probably is a sign of your cervix opening, of course. But
Hmm.
yeah, the mucus plug itself by itself is not a sign of labor starting or progressing or something.
Hmm.
Unless there's other factors, obviously, that you're having contractions and all of that. But that's a very strange thing to, I've never ever heard any midwife ever say that you're
That
not allowed to come unless your waters break.
Well, that wasn't their only requirement. They did say as well, they're just like, you sound like you're talking through this pretty well. They're just like, you must not be in that much pain. They're just like, usually when you're in active labor, it's going to be a lot harder to speak through it. And so, like, I was having a normal conversation with them. They also said, they're just like, well, you had a partial labor before. So I was just upset. Like, I was even more upset at this point. I was kind of pissed, to be honest. I was just like, well, I was just like, I have my mucus membrane fallout. I was like, I've been having these contractions. I know it didn't happen in the past, but I was just upset and it just felt like doubt and like it's not happening again. And they're waiting to see. They're just like, if your water breaks and if you're finding like the contractions progress and it's harder to speak through, and like it's more intense, then like call us again. And so I again distracted myself. We went for a drive. And I was just crying. I was crying in the car. Like the contractions were still there, but they're getting really wonky. Like instead of getting closer together, they're actually getting further apart, or like the time, and it wasn't consistent. And so I didn't know what was happening at this point. Like I'd been having contractions. I think from four, it was midnight, 1 a.m. at this point. So it was a while.
So
And
what was the reason you wanted to go out for a drive at 1 a.m. in like early labor?
My partner, one of the things we just did for fun was he loves coffee. He is Puerto Rican, and they drink, like his family at least drinks coffee at like with every meal, like no matter what time of day it is. And so he wanted to go to McDonald's to get coffee, and also to, I know, and to distract me because I was crying and upset. And he was just like, "Come on, let's go for a drive." Because I do love drives. I do love like late night drives. And so like I didn't really want it to be McDonald's. I was like, this is lame. But I was like, whatever. And so we went. I was crying. He got his coffee. We drove back home. It was a nice distraction. He was just like, everything's gonna work out. He's like, the baby's gonna come, and the baby's gonna come. Like, it's all right. And so we get back home, and I was like, I just don't know what's happening, and the contractions are changing, and it just felt like it was not happening. It was gonna fall through. And the second I stand up, my water breaks. Like I get out of the car, I felt like a stronger contraction. I was like, oh, like this feels like a little bit different. And I get up, and like it felt like I was peeing, or it was like I was peeing, but I had no control, like the amount of liquid. And I was just like, I think my water just broke. And he was just like, really? And I was like, yeah. And so I was really happy. Again, it's 1 a.m. I call the midwives this time. I was like, hey, my water broke and the contractions are changing. I was like, I think this might be happening. And they're just like, it sounds like you're definitely progressing. They're just like, it still sounds like you're able to talk through it a little bit. So like let us know when it keeps progressing. Like let us know, because if I got there and I wasn't 5 centimeters dilated according to their policy, I would have had to be sent home. So they don't let you stay unless you meet those requirements. And there's only one birthing center where I live in the entire state. And I lived about almost 50 minutes away from it. So if I got there, I had to drive back. It wasn't necessarily going to be ideal. And so I waited. They're progressing. And then I called back again at like 2 a.m. and I was like, hey, like it feels different. It was harder for me to speak through, despite all of the prep. I also took that kind of as an offense because I was like, I did a lot of mindset prep for these contractions. I was just like, they're waves, and I might just have like a higher tolerance for them. And I was like, you don't know. But anyway, I got there. That was tough. Sitting in the car for 48 minutes, just about with like being in active labor with contractions, not being able to move around. Movement helped me so much during my labor, and having to sit there was just like challenging. Um, but I also don't know. I don't know if that helps things, but it was challenging. Either way, I got to the birthing center, and the midwife that I'd never seen or met before but heard of. She was actually the founder of the birthing center. She checked me out, and I got there. My best friend was also there. That's partially why I wanted a birthing center birth, because in the hospitals they only allowed 2 people. I think it was like your partner and the doctor. And I wanted my family there. I wanted my mom. I wanted my partner. I wanted my best friend, and I wanted to do it on my terms. And so I got there with my best friend. She met us there, and my partner. And she checked me out, and I was actually only 3 centimeters dilated. And my heart dropped because I was like, oh God. I was like, I'm going to have to go home. And this whole drive was really tough. And I was scared too, because I was like, well, I live so far away. And I got really lucky because they made it a point that I met all of the midwives at that point so that I felt comfortable during my birth. But I happened to not meet her. And because she was the founder, I think she was able to break the rules a little bit. And so she looked at me and she was like, I have a feeling about you. She was like, we'll just wait an hour and see how it goes. And this is at 3 a.m. And I was just like, okay. And so she's let me stay upstairs. She couldn't admit me into a room yet. She let me stay in the living room. And my labor progressed, and I had my birthing ball, which I hated. I thought I was gonna like it, and I like shoved it away. I was like, no, this hurts. I didn't want anything to do with it. I was on all fours, and my partner was really kind, and he was like pressing into my back. And that helped as well. And my best friend was there sitting, and she had my like playlist playing, which was not for birth. It was just a random playlist. Anything could have played. So like I was just so distracted at that point. But it progressed, and it was challenging, but I also didn't want to resist it because I knew that the challenge was bringing me further to where I needed to be. And so with each contraction, I surrendered the best I could. I probably sounded a bit crazy and looked crazy, but I heard about like loose lips, loose lips. So I was doing this like basically for all of my contractions. When I felt them, I would just move around. I felt like I moved my hips in circles a lot and just like breathe through it. I was audible. I wasn't trying to hold my voice back or anything like that. I wasn't screaming. I didn't really feel like I needed to scream, or that didn't feel like natural to me. It was more like a moaning. And again, the that like entire time, and that seemed to help me. Um, my mom came towards the end, thank God, and the midwife checked me at around 4 a.m. And sure enough, I was 5 centimeters dilated at 4 a.m., so within an hour. And she let me stay. She was like, okay, it looks like you're progressing. We can keep you here. And so she asked if I wanted to be in a shower or a tub, and I just wanted to plop myself in some warm water. So she filled the tub up. It was a big tub. It took 15 minutes to fill. I got in the tub, so relaxing. 10 out of 10 recommend. And I wasn't even planning on doing that. I thought I was going to be in a shower on my birthing ball, but as I said, it hurt so much. I was like, no. And so that happened at 5 a.m. She kept checking me, like not frequently, I would say, but she would always ask. She was like, "Is it okay if I check you just to see how we're doing?" And so she did do like I think like little like cervical checks and such, and I was okay with that. She was very respectful of my boundaries. She always asked. She always let me know what was happening or what she was going to do. And I was, I think, fully dilated by around maybe like 5:30 a.m.
Wow. Yeah. See, I love this piece of wisdom because a lot of people think, or, in the hospital, it's like this, you open half a centimeter to a centimeter an hour and like this linear thing. And that's not true. And I love that because you said, around 3 or something, you came there and you were only
Mhm.
quote unquote 3. And then literally, what, 2.5 hours later, you're fully. And that is such an important piece of wisdom because it's so important what you did there. You went in and you felt safe. You could stay where you felt safe. That's number one, right? Had you been sent home, you might have had much longer, labor process because we close up, we hold on, but because you were in a place where you felt this is where I'm going to birth, so I can let go now, and you felt safe, you could open. And you also obviously used beautiful techniques like the horse lips and all of that, and
Yeah.
really really allow the power to come through you because you realize that if I allow and lean into the pain, that's where actually I'm going to progress. And so that's beautiful pieces of wisdom, and that you opened so much in such a short time because actually the cervix doesn't know about linear time at all. Yes. Hmm.
Yeah. And it felt like I was kind of in a time warp. Like I didn't realize how much time was going by, or how long it was taking. Like you're just so present and in the moment. And yes, horse lips, that's what it's called. So I did that. She checked me at 5:30. I was fully dilated, and she was like, "All right." She was like, "Any whenever you're ready." She was like, "You're ready to push." And I was like, "Whoa," because it just felt real then. Maybe a little after 5:30. Um, but yeah, I also forgot that the contractions got closer together and closer together, like with less space in between and more intense as you got towards the end. So basically, by the time I had to push, I was wiped energetically. I was like, whoa, like that took a lot out of me because like I forgot at least that it was going to keep coming. So it felt like I was getting slammed, 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 like almost like if a wave could like knock you down the second you stand up, it's like pushing you back again. And so it was intense, but I wouldn't say it was like painful. It was just intense, which is actually what I was calling in for my birth during the visualization. I was like, I wanted it to be intense, empowering, and to be surrounded by love, and that I was. My best friend was right there. I had music playing, it was relaxing. My partner was holding my hand and like just there for whatever was coming through, and the midwives were really respectful. My mom was in another room, but like when I was ready to push, I was like, where's my mom? And so she came in and she was like behind me in the tub because I didn't plan on doing a water birth, but I was so again present and engaged in the moment and what felt good. I wasn't getting out of that tub, so I was just there. She was rubbing my forehead, and my partner was holding my hand, and my best friend was taking pictures and videos because I did want footage of my birth. And yeah, after 5:30, I started to push, and pushing felt way better for me than the contractions. So it kind of felt like a break. Like it was still intense, don't get me wrong. And I do not think like I remember at one point it felt like I could feel my joints like stretching and expanding, and I felt like in my body I felt like a crack 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 like around my hips, and not in a painful way, like almost like a popping. And I was like, oh, like okay. And so um I pushed with the contractions, like, and it didn't even feel like I had to force it. Like your body pushes for you, and that's exactly what happened. Like it was involuntary almost. And so like with each push I just let it happen, and when it stopped, and I just kind of like sat there. And then when it came to the ring of fire, my midwife, like I remember listening in one of the videos, they're just like, you don't push through, you don't force it, you let yourself stretch and expand.
Yeah.
And my midwife was really kind. She was just like, don't run away. She was just like, hold it, hold it. And so I had to like breathe. I think it was like I was breathing in, um, and relaxing the best I could while being stretched to my full capacity. Um, and yeah, I held it. My midwife guided me through. She was such a grounding force. And she was like, okay. She was like, I think like whenever you feel it and whenever you're ready, she's like, you're almost there. And I couldn't believe that because I was like, well, I've got shoulders and a whole body to push out, and his head's not even there fully. I didn't know how it worked at that point, but I pushed, I think, two more times. Like when the contractions came, his head popped out, and she was like, "You're almost there." She was like, "One more good push," and she was like, "And you're done." And I didn't think I was gonna feel his head because I thought that sounded really creepy, but I was like, "Okay." And so I felt it is surreal touching a body part that isn't yours in that moment. Like you expect to feel something, but you don't because it's his body. And I pushed one more time, and he flew out, and I was like, "Whoa!" Like, and I picked this little like kind of slimy creature out of the water, and I just feel his back, and I was just like, this is so wild, like this is insane, it's very real. And I'm just picking up out the water because I told her that I wanted to get our son. Like I didn't want her taking him out, I wanted to hold him and see him. And she did let me know. She was just like, I'm just gonna make sure that like your umbilical cord isn't like short and snap, so like pick him up slowly. And so I picked him up, and I was just feeling his back, and I just looked, I'm like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And then he's there. And he's this cutie patootie little peanut, 5 pounds, 12 ounces. Um, yeah, and she's like, she stimulates him a little bit, rubs his back. He was quiet for a little bit, but he cried after that. And there he was, and just like on my chest, um, in the tub, I let like all the blood leave my umbilical cord. I had delayed cord clamping. Um, they did offer to keep my placenta, but there was a whole mix up with that. So it actually, like the people who came to collect the placentas, I forgot it when I went home. They came and they actually like got rid of it by accident. I was like, oh, bummer. But I also trusted that I was like, everything's meant to be. So I'm just like, it's not that I have my baby. I don't really care too much. And so I got my golden hour. He was tiny, so they did do glucose checks in the beginning, but long story short, I had a phenomenal birth. Um, Everything in it, including my conception, I believe truly, deeply, completely served me and transformed me. Um, I feel like your life changes when you decide you're ready for it too, and when you allow it in. Uh, and yeah, it was beautiful and beautiful, powerful process. My mom there, my best friend there, partner there, really supportive midwives, respecting my rights and how I wanted to birth and labor. Um, and I had a phenomenal experience, and I really did love my birth. Um, and I loved my body after too. I had no idea what to expect. I had no expectations. I was like, oh, whatever it needs to do is what it needs to do. So I got like loose dresses because I was like, that sounds comfortable. And I thought it was the cutest thing. I remember looking in the mirror after and just like, oh, look at this little pouch, so cute. Um, And it didn't last as long as I expected. I was kind of sad. I wish I took more pictures. But the whole process, the breastfeeding process, the birthing process, the postpartum, all of the support made a world of a difference. And so, yeah, that was my birth. It was phenomenal. And it does get to be good, intense, but good.
Wow, beautiful. Thank you so much, Simone, for sharing that.
Thank you.
If you had a first time mama in front of you right now who's about to have her first baby and she
Mhm.
really wants to have a natural and empowering birth experience, what advice and pearls of wisdoms would you give to her?
Surround yourself with support that feels nourishing and expansive for you. There are a lot of people that want to support, all well meaning, but everybody has a different experience, different fears, different beliefs they bring to the table. I had a lot of people tell me about how terrible birth could be, or make sure you get an epidural, or a birth center isn't safe, or what have you. A lot of people had their opinions, right? And like, it wasn't meant to be malicious about how you need to mother, how you need to birth, how you need to labor, how you need to be pregnant. I was also plant based. That's another thing. During my pregnancy, and I was really healthy. The baby was healthy. I'm still healthy, but I also got controversy about that. I did have eggs, so I was like kind of vegetarian during my pregnancy. But everybody has something to say, and only you know what's truly right for you. And when you can get clear on your values and what your intuition is speaking, is sharing with you, and how your intuition speaks and what feels aligned and beautiful and expansive for you and your family, I feel like it's a lot easier to make decisions and to choose support from that space, because I don't think we're meant to go it alone. Not because you can't, but because we're meant to receive and we're meant to be held as well as we step into this new version of ourselves. And so I went from originally my gynecologist, who I loved, but I switched late in my pregnancy to a birthing center because my gynecologist could only deliver me at a hospital, and I knew that wasn't what I wanted. So I had to say bye to her. But when I said yes to the birthing center, that really helped my empowering birth story and my experience. So I would say, like, you know what you want, you know what feels best for you, choose from that place and focus on the stories that empower you. Focus on surrounding yourself with the mindsets, with people who had the experiences or close to what you want. Also, another side note, in case anybody was wondering or afraid of this, I didn't tear during my birth. And I pushed my son out in 8 minutes. So it doesn't have to be super long. You don't have to tear, even though tears do happen. And I'm not gonna lie, I didn't know if I tore or not, like after the ring of fire, because I pushed him out and it was still so intense. I was like, I don't know what happened. But it's all possible for you. And I think even my business coach at the time, she had 4 kids. She had all natural births. She also didn't tear, and she breastfed her kids for 7 years, like back to back to back. So I also had that person. I had this podcast. I had the book. I had my mom, and all of that positive inspiration is, I think, what created space and safety in my body to believe it was possible, and and okay for me to have. Like, I didn't have to suffer. It didn't have to be bad, and so that helped a lot. But also knowing that you're not alone. You're not alone. It might feel that way, but you're going to find your people when you allow them in, and when you choose to focus on who you want to be in the life and the experience you want to have. The more you focus on that, the more you focus on what's important to you as a parent and as a mom and as a person, the more you're going to be a magnet for your desires. And there is also surrender in play as well. Like, I think that was a big piece with allowing my labor to progress and allowing my life to progress, is that I had to surrender. Also, be willing to surrender and trust in a plan that was greater than my own. And I think that's also what relaxes your mind, your body, and your spirit to have the experience that you and your family are meant to have, and trusting yourself. So, yeah.
Hmm. Beautiful, beautiful. That was all so very wise and wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your birth story as well as your birthing wisdom with us.
Thank, thank you for listening. This is one of the first places I've actually shared my full birth story. Like I share it with friends, but I have been like waiting to share the whole thing. And I do hope that whoever is listening, I hope that even if it's just one piece that helped you, that it does serve you. Because I just remember being so scared, especially with your first, not knowing what was possible, thinking it had to be awful, and it really doesn't have to be. And even afterwards, just like motherhood is such a powering, raw, and real experience. Um, and at the same time, that gets to be good too amidst the challenges. And again, I do think it comes to allowing in aligned support and to trusting yourself and to saying yes to joy amidst all of the messiness and the chaos and the imperfection that is just life and beauty. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. If you love this podcast, then please consider sharing it, leave a review, or make a contribution on our Patreon page. And if you want to connect on social media, then find the podcast on Instagram as The Natural Birth Podcast. Thank you for listening.